a writer who's obviously been extremely important to me. He was the guiding spirit behind the 48 Laws of Power, undoubtedly, and that is my good friend Niccolo Machiavelli.
In 1469, Niccolo Machiavelli was born in Florence. The son of a lawyer, he was not born into a family of great wealth, nor one of poverty, but a family that prioritized a classical education, with Machiavelli being trained in what was known at the time as Studia Humanitatis, or in English, the studies of humanity. At the age of 7, he would begin learning Latin, followed by grammar, rhetoric, and poetry, with their education considered complete when one had learnt ancient history and moral philosophy. It was commonly believed that these subjects would best prepare someone for public life. The Prince, a collection of notes and lessons he had observed regarding statecraft, leadership, and manipulation. Far from the Christian ideals of modesty and temperance of the time, the Prince would delve behind the curtains and highlight the true mechanisms and tactics rulers use to gain, consolidate, and exercise power. The Prince would not be published during Machiavelli's lifetime, with it being only 5 years after his death in 1532 that the first printed copies of the book were distributed. Some would call it the work of Satan's finger, and others a handbook for tyrants, with William Shakespeare in the early 1600s using the term Machiavel to refer to a cunning and scheming person. But over time, some would begin to see the Prince in a different light, that it described the world as it really operates. Machiavelli's little book was a constant threat. It reminded people that power is always up for grabs, always a question of what can be taken by force or treachery, and always, despite all protests to the contrary, the prime concern of any ruler.
Being nice may well be a virtue in general, but what citizens most need from their rulers is effectiveness, which may well call upon some darker arts. Once we understand this basic requirement, we stand to be less disappointed and clearer about what we want from our politicians.
In all actions of all men, and especially of princes, where there is no court of appeal, the end justifies the means. Perhaps no man in history has taken these words more seriously than Joseph Stalin, who was known to annotate his own copy of The Prince. Ruling over the Soviet Union from 1928 until his death in 1953, Stalin would, through the calculated use of terror, force, and propaganda, transform the Soviet Union into a world power, while gaining the love, support, and admiration of his people. You must either pamper people or destroy them. Harm them just a little and they'll hit back. Harm them seriously and they won't be able to. So if you're going to do people harm, do it in such a way that you do not have to fear their vengeance. To consolidate his power, Stalin was willing to use any and all tools at his disposal to completely crush his opponents, making sure they stood no chance of challenging his rule. So long as he has the people on his side, a ruler needn't worry about conspiracies. But when they are against him and hate him, he'll have to watch everyone's every move. Stalin understood that public support was crucial to his position. If he was loved and the people swore allegiance only to him, it would be very difficult for his enemies to oust him from power. And so, Stalin would go to extreme lengths to develop a cult of personality, with the state producing an endless stream of propaganda, portraying Stalin as a hero and a god. Statues of him were erected across the country. The city of Tsaritsyn was renamed to Stalingrad, and during World War II, Stalin's name was added to the national anthem.
Some of the fields we choose, if not politics, then perhaps business or family life, may require what we evasively call difficult decisions, by which we really mean ethical trade-offs. We may have to sacrifice neo-Christian visions of kindness for the sake of practical effectiveness. We may have to lie in order to keep a relationship afloat. We may have to ignore the feelings of certain employees to keep a business going. And that, insists Machiavelli, is the price of dealing with the world as it is and not as we feel it should be. the world has continued to love and hate Machiavelli in equal measure for insisting on focusing our attention on the uncomfortable tension between two things we love and always want to have together but perhaps can't: effectiveness and niceness.